And last year, Mr. Nicholas. This year's senior class has selected Bob Henningsen. It will be Mr. Henningsen's second time giving this address, and I would like to first commend you all for your wisdom. Mr. Henningsen has taught English at Burroughs since 1981. He served as a college counselor for 24 years, and he has written literally hundreds of letters of recommendation for students. In fact, when I became the director of college counseling a few years ago, I can recall many directors of admission asking me about Bob because they recalled how beautifully and how strikingly he writes. He has also been called by many a beacon of calm in the maelstrom that is the college search. But it is in the classroom that most of us think of Mr. Henningsen. His passion and his compassion have led to 3 decades of Burroughs students who have fallen in love with the written word. He is, quite simply, one of the finest teachers I have ever known. Mr. Henningsen is the former chair of the English department. He's the chair, has been the holder of the Neville Perry Endowed Chair in English. He used to coach baseball. He was the director of August Days. He was a faculty advisor to the world. In his retirement, he looks forward to more time for his 2 great passions, writing and the second, long, solitary walks. Humble, thoughtful, loving. He is the kind of person most of us wish we could be. It's a great pleasure to introduce Bob Henningsen.
Staff, parents, students, guests from near and far, and especially the class of 2012, good morning. Back in early April, when I was invited to speak here today, I shared with Mr. Abbott that the last time I spoke at Senior Assembly, 1991, I ran 5 miles around the track out back before I approached the podium, just to calm down. That didn't happen this morning. 21 years, 20 additional pounds, and 2 rickety knees later, I stand here full of nerves and emotion, without the aid of exhaustion, except for that accrued with age. But what an honor it is to be here, invited by you, a class I will never forget. Those of you who I haven't had in class I've come to know in other ways, I'm happy to say. One of those ways happened in August at Dryland, when you kicked off your senior year beside a fire along the banks of Sinking Creek with memories of 7th grade crushes. And through the rest of the weekend, you laughed and played in harmony. Through this school year, you have sustained that harmony. And on your last day here, that last day in April, you scooted around, sang and danced and laughed, as the good kids you are. We faculty smiled with you and were happy for you. You made doing so easy, because while senior pranks have often been more annoying than anything, yours was not a prank at all, but a well-earned and well-conducted celebration. While so many people in so many classes have endeared me to them, and each and every class has its virtues and distinctions, a select few take distinction to a whole new level. The class of 2012 is one of them. This became first apparent to me in September of 2008, when 30 of you, divided between periods 1 and 2, entered my room as 9th graders. Eunice and Jean brought sunshine. Lizzie and Annie, zest. Kevin and Katie brought sincerity, and Alon brought Ian. Though they've been here since 7th grade, I didn't know either of these guys, just as I knew none of you. I soon discovered that the raging ginger, in temperament at least, was more wry than raging, and could burst into a smile full of pearly whites in a glorious second. And I learned that the beetle-browed loud one was, well, he was Ian. Anyone in this room I've had the pleasure of teaching might remember that we begin the year with the paper recalling a summer experience. You might also remember that before we write the paper, we share answers to prompts that match numbers drawn from a hat in an exercise I call the hat trick. It was during this go-round that 13 others in Period 2 and I were introduced to the concept of Amish camp. Alon announced that his prompt asked him to recall the summer's most embarrassing moment. Before Alon could say a further word, Mr. Beetlebrow blurted, "Does it have to be from this summer?" After I said that I supposed it didn't, this kid, who was startling to me, shouted and laughed, "Hey, Alon, tell him about Amish camp." Through his grim lips, Alon snarled, "Shut up, Ian," while the class hushed with befuddlement. The concept was just too strange to understand. Quietly, we wondered how people so devoted to simplicity could package their lifestyle into something akin to a theme park. Amish camp? Really? To myself, I wondered, what's next? The Carmelite Cruise Line? Trappist tours? While the class quietly cogitated, Ian again implored, "Come on, Alon, tell them about how last summer your mom made you go to Amish camp." All eyes returned to the redhead, who, red-faced with humiliation, painfully fessed up. "Yeah, my mom sent me to Amish camp." Then he paused dramatically and delivered the kicker. "In Iowa." Had Alon said Siberia, the shock couldn't have been greater. Whatever it was, Amish camp must have been bad enough. But to have the punishment meted out in Iowa suggested unforgivable torture. And that's all that Alon offered about Amish camp that day and for months after, that his mom sent him to one in Iowa. But neither Ian nor the class would let it go, and through that fall and winter, we incessantly urged, "Come on, Alon, tell us about it. What's it like?" Not until February did Alon relent. Having just finished Romeo and Juliet, the class was given a paper assignment that read like this. Professor, poet, Shakespearean scholar Mark Van Doren contends, night is the medium through which this play is felt and in which the lovers are most at home. Night, together with certain fires that blaze in its depths for contrast and romance. To this I had to simply discuss. That day, Alon stayed after class to ask, "Mr. Henningsen, do you think writing about Amish camp would work for this assignment?" "Absolutely." As long as you read your paper to the class. As much as anyone, I wanted this mystery solved. Part of the reason was that I grew up in Iowa, some 50 miles, in fact, from an Amish community that I never knew to offer anything close to a camp. The concept remained ridiculous. Well, come to find out, as clarified when Alon began to read his paper a week later, the Amish responsible for this oxymoron lived not in Iowa, but Ohio. The picture resolved further during Alon's story. In his matter-of-fact manner, Alon told of how he carried buckets of water to trees in a freshly planted orchard, mucked out stalls and stables, and was taught how to milk goats. It was then that the mystery was solved. Though they may live simple lives, the Amish are not simple-minded people, for they figured out a way to lure unsuspecting youth from all over the country to come and do their grunt work for them. What's more, these kids or their well-intentioned parents would pay to do it. After Alon's paper, we in the class acquired a whole new respect for the Amish and equated their name to genius. But we also understood Alon's pain, for he was one of those unsuspecting youth lured to their camp. The other time from your 9th grade year that I most remember was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Dress-up day, grandparents visiting day, and the day when an elected senior speaks in morning assembly, as Morgan did so movingly in this past November. That year the speaker was Rob Poppelmeyer, and I dare say, The sincerity in his open letter of gratitude to the school was on par with Morgan's. Robin entered Burroughs in the 9th grade, and in his address, he expressed how JBS had changed his life. He was touched, and we were touched, by his humility and heartfelt appreciation. Elegant and fine dress off to class we went, everyone aglow with warm fuzzies, or so I thought. As I was beginning to discuss the options for our upcoming paper over a separate piece, Kelsey DuPont inserted her words into mine. "This is all so depressing," she began. Confused, I asked Kelsey what she meant, and so she launched forth. "I mean, think about it. Okay, so we write this paper, and we'll be glad when it's over. But guess what? Two weeks later, there'll be another paper, and then another after that. It's endless. We work and work to get through this place, just so we can go to college and do it all over again for at least another 4 years. And then after that, we have to quick find some job that we'll probably hate, and go through some ridiculous routine day after day. We work our lives away, and before you know it, we're dead." I mean, what's the point? We never get a chance to live. It's just all so depressing. I was stunned, speechless. This cute and innocent Kelsey. There she was in a perfectly coordinated ensemble, skirt, blouse, and vest, accented by a ribbon in her hair that I swear was pink, spouting nihilism. To Kelsey's right sat Sidney Lehman, and to Sidney's right, Catherine Petrullo. With her crossed leg pumping at a furious pace and her round deer-like eyes boring right through me, Catherine averred, "She's right, you know." Yes, I knew that in many ways Kelsey was right, but I felt so surrounded by a circle of faces seeking assurance that she wasn't right, that I had to tell Kelsey she was wrong, that there was more to life than that. "Oh yeah?" she shot back, "like what?" And at that, I fumbled. Whatever I said, I knew then, and have known ever since, to be lame and unconvincing. So, Kelsey, in the 4 years since you asked that question, I've done a lot of thinking, and I'm ever so glad to have another chance at a decent answer. For I've come to the conclusion that to get as much out of life as we can before we die, we should, at most every opportunity, try to have fun. I'm sure that this sounds too simplistic and naive. I felt the same back in 1977 when the JT album by James Taylor was released. While surveying the dust jacket, I found couched among hits like Your Smiling Face and Handyman, a song entitled The Secret of Life. Excited by the prospect that the key to universal understanding waited within, I skipped the hits and set the needle straight on that track, only to hear JT croon that the secret of life is enjoying the passing of time. I expected more and flipped to the hits. That seemed way too easy. But over the years, old JT has made more and more sense to me. Just as you were right, Kelsey, the life, as Sisyphus shows us, can be an endless and seemingly futile routine. So is James Taylor right when he says the secret of life is enjoying the passing of time. I think that life can be that simple and joyful, as long as we look to have fun. Explanations are needed. Just what, for instance, do I mean by fun? I'll approach this by saying what I don't mean. I don't mean constant partying. If you haven't learned already, you'll learn soon enough that living the party isn't living at all. For those times between parties become hours you just have to get through, and you usually do so feeling rotten from the party before. That's no fun, and it leads to a cycle more vicious than even Kelsey can imagine. In some way, what we need to do is bring a party or fun to each of our waking moments. If awake to our surroundings, we can find in them opportunities for humor, discovery, joy, and affection. When alert to the wonder of this world, we can exult in its splendor. For help with this, I turn to a line from All Women's Song of Myself, that, in fact, I quoted to the class of '91. Whitman says, you must habit yourself to the dazzle of the light. Habit yourself to the dazzle of the light. Integrate into your life life's wonder. Recognize and revel in it. To do this best, we must keep the child inside of you alive, for who knows better how to have fun than a kid? And who has a better imagination? Stay curious, playful, as you were on your last day of school, affectionate, and never let go of your ability to be amazed. Kid around when you can, but do so with sensitivity. Avoid stupidity and malice, and learn to recognize the moment when all kidding must be set aside. In all other moments, look for the light and let it dazzle. In spite of the papers yet to write and test and take, the job to seek and the family to make, if you look for humor, irony, beauty, or truth in each moment, in time's passing, you'll enjoy yourself and know the secret of life. Having good people around you will help. Personally, I've been blessed in my 31 years here, for I've seen some beautiful expressions of life come and go, just as I see them before me now. It's here that I've been able to keep the child inside of me alive and enjoy a lifetime of fun. I'm so very grateful. To set the record straight, Kelsey's depression on that Thanksgiving passed. For not long after, the song returned to her heart, the smile to her face, and her pink ribbons no longer belied some disturbing darkness within. As for Alon, obviously, he survived Amish camp in good form. I'd like to thank Kelsey and Alon for unwittingly writing this speech for me, the theme of which I'll try to sum up like this. You know how excited you are before you go on vacation? Well, try to bring that feeling to each moment of your life, for it's here and now that we live. While I'm asking that you look for fun in daily life as though it were a vacation, distinctions must still be drawn, as Alon reminds us in the last line of his infamous essay, and I quote, "If some morning you wake up and find yourself tugging on a goat's teat, it's not a vacation."
I need to begin with an apology. You have just learned the meaning of life, and now you got to sit through the speech from Mr. Abbott. Well, the other night, the seniors hosted the review